I'm going to buy a controlling stake in TGI, and I'm going to tell them that the correct way to have the toilet rolls is the other way around, because that's what's important to me.
Hey everybody, it's John Lamberton here alongside my good friend and business partner, Mr. Jason Brockman. We are here for another episode of the Ambitious Lifestyle Business Podcast, where as always, it is our job to help you get more customers and make more money without just working harder. So without further ado, let's dive straight into this month's episode.
Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the Ambitious Lifestyle Business Podcast. John and Jason here as always, and today we are joined by 1%er Danny Harris. Danny is from a limited company called DH2026 Limited. Very catchy title, does exactly what it says on the tin as you'd expect. Danny, you are our resident Facebook ads expert within the 1% Club, aren't you?
Yep, I've been in and around the 1% Club. I reckon it's just about a year about now, I would think. Maybe a month either side of a year, something like that. And in that time kind of pointed a few people in the right direction with a few Facebook ads and done a few bits and pieces of teaching people some stuff. And generally, it's been a great year in there.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's so where does DH2026 Limited come from? That's not the name of a typical Facebook ads agency, is it?
No, it's not one of those that you'd know exactly what I do by reading the name of the limited company. But it was actually a company I started at the actual sort of limited company itself only a couple of months ago. And I don't actually trade ever as DH2026. It's just the parent company for a few different products I have. And by and large, I'm a big fan of all things kind of mindset and goal orientated and stuff like that. And my whole kind of idea for this business is it's there to serve a purpose for my lifestyle, as opposed to me working within a business and just being a kind of have a job almost. It's there as a vehicle to take me to where I want to be in life. And the idea is my initials are obviously DH, so that's where the DH part comes from. And 2026, on the 19th of June, is when I will be exiting the business for the amount of money that I would like to have. The reason it's the 19th of June is it's the day before my 55th birthday, at which point I'd like to be retired by the time I'm 55. So it's kind of a bit like like a vision board, or I think some people call it an image board or stuff like that. It's just whenever I have to do anything business related, the date is kind of reinforced into my mind, if that makes sense.
Definitely. I love the fact, sorry, but my computer's being in there because I'm just looking at my vision board, which is set on my computer. It's one of the things I talked about in Big Ideas for Small Businesses back in 2017 was the power of just having front of mind, or often, calling into your subconscious what it is that you want to achieve, whether that's, 12 months from now, 5 years from now, or the 19th of June, 2026. I love the fact that you've got that very, very specific date in mind. You've not plucked it out of the air and just said, well, let's set a 5-year goal. You've said, okay, by age 55, what do I want my life to look like? And I'm guessing that you are now picturing your 55th birthday. I don't know, where are you? Are you in a villa? Are you on a yacht somewhere? Are you on your private jet? Where are you going to be on your 55th birthday?
In all honesty, I've got a lifestyle that I want to achieve. Quite exactly where I'll be, I don't know. I've got a big thing about going back and helping other people, and weirdly, I have this whole concept of starting a charity at some point. Mm-hmm. And the point of the charity is to help underprivileged kids, let's say kind of teenage kids, learn about things like online marketing, so they can learn a different route to the unpleasant routes that a lot of kind of disadvantaged kids end up going down. And it's to briefly explain it to you, I figure if I went to somewhere like say, for example, a care home where there's sort of young kids or a naughty kids school, whatever they call those kind of places, And I was to take a group of kids and help them create a digital product and sell it online. What we would do, we would teach them a number of things. So firstly, we would teach them how to create a product, how to sell it online, how to work as a team, because one would be the graphics person, one would be the copywriter, whatever we kind of came up with. But within that group, they would also have a goal for their future, which would, let's say, in a year's time, we make 10 grand selling the product, and that takes 5 kids to Disney World for a week. Yeah. So these sort of disadvantaged kids get to create a product and see that there's an end goal fairly quickly, which they can then, enjoy the trip to Disney World or whatever it happens to be. And then any excess money could go back to the care home or the school or whatever it happens to be. And then those kids can then teach the next wave of kids that come through the next year to how to do what they've done. So it becomes a kind of a self-fulfilling, self-financing, self-funding thing that just kind of does a bit of good out in the world, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. So is it more what you need at age 55 if you're going to do this then? Is that the time you need, or is that the money?
I think more than the time or the money, it's the credibility to say I exited my company for this much money from what was in effect a zero start. Yeah, I've never been quite kind of penniless, but I haven't started from having a massive pile of cash.
Yeah.
So having that on your CV is obviously going to give you a bit of credibility to be able to do this. Whereas if at the minute you did it, you're a bit like, well, who are you, mate? You know?
Why should I listen to this guy?
Exactly.
Yeah. Definitely. JStart's a bit similar to, we used to work with a company, didn't we, that set up a program in prisons, and they were helping ex-cons, or current cons as they were, actually reform and learn these digital skills that they could then take into the outside world, didn't they?
We did indeed, yeah. That's exactly what they were doing, actually working inside a prison with the current prisoners and, as you say, teaching them the digital skills they needed in order to succeed once they got on the outside. So, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it first dawned on me a couple of years ago. I think it was a book by Daniel Priestley, maybe oversubscribed. I think is one of his. I can't quite remember what the book was, but he talked about going into some kind of one of these kind of places with the disadvantaged kids, and he was talking about how they were saying drugs is the ultimate sales tool because everyone needs it and the supply and all the rest of it. And Daniel Priestley kind of broke it down to, you don't control the supply chain, you don't control the price, you don't control this, you're likely to end up in prison, you could get shot, it's much easier to have much better to have a sort of a legitimate business, should we say.
Yeah. Definitely, I like that. So let's look again at kind of lifestyle, because I know there'll be a lot of people listening to this thinking that's great. You've got this exit plan for 2026. What are you doing now to lay the foundations for that exit in 6 years' time?
I think what's happened to me over the last couple of years, it's dawned on me the work that I do has changed quite dramatically, and I've kind of added strings to my bow, should we say. Whereas to start with, when I started working in this industry, I was purely managing Facebook pages for people. There was no advertising involved or anything like that. So that was kind of one service, if you like. I then moved on to very much more advertising side of things because Facebook pages have changed and Facebook's evolved and so on. And I've got that very much nailed down now. So that side of the business is kind of ready to run itself. So I'm just now kind of putting a team in place for that. My next stage, which I'm about to go into, is teaching other people how to do their own stuff. So how to run their own Facebook accounts and so on, which I've never done before. At that stage, once I've done that for a little while, I'll have processes in place so that can then manage itself. Then the next stage is kind of teaching people how to do what I do with Facebook, and that's another stage. So each of the stages of the business and each kind of new strand that I add, the idea is I make it so it's a kind of a self-operating, systems-based side of the business that I can then kind of just hand over to somebody else and just say, this is how we do it, run that for me. So I mean, there'd be a little bit more to it than that. Don't get me wrong. If it was that easy, it'd be great. But yeah,
I'm loving that, because actually what you're doing is those blueprints that you're creating for each of those the businesses that you want to create, and each step you take is what's going to drive your charity stuff. When you kind of get into the charity, you've got the teaching in place already. You've got them to be able to take on as the agency, kind of learning those reps as well. So actually, these blueprints you're going to take and swipe and deploy, and then just use again for the charity stuff. And I love that idea. That's fabulous.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always been. My brain isn't a very organized place, I have to be honest. I'm not the most systemized person in the world, but I do understand that having systems makes life a lot easier. So even though it costs me, I have to kind of, I've got the devil and the angel on my shoulder every day, and I'm arguing myself and do a system. No, don't do a system, do a system, and so on. But one of the things, when I was my last employer, I think it was my last employer, I used to work for the American restaurant chain TGI Fridays. And a bit like all the big brand companies, everything is systemized. If you go back to the E-Myth or one of those kind of books, it's all and when I was with TGI Fridays, they were part of Whitbread, which was a much bigger company who owned at the time Pizza Hut and Marriott and Premier Inn and a load of other things. Each business within Whitbread is like a standalone business with its own systems and structures. And in TGI Fridays, if you wanted to change the toilet paper, there is written down, genuinely, that it is written down, this is how to change toilet paper in a guest toilet.
So which is the correct way? Is it, is it?
No, it's outside, actually. and also, it's meant to be 2 sheets down, and then you fold the corner of the paper over so it's a little spiky thing. But anyway, that's by the by. But how did we get there? The point being, any part of Whitbread's business is run by a managing director, and then there's divisions within Whitbread and so on. But each managing director knows exactly how to run his little bit of the business, even though Whitbread's a billion pound business. It's kind of almost the managing director just more or less catches reports, as far as I see. Obviously he's just pieces it all together, and that's kind of where I see myself in a few years, albeit not quite as big as Whitbread.
Yeah, definitely. The one of the biggest factors in the price you will achieve when you exit is not necessarily how much revenue you generate. It is the predictability of that revenue after you've exited. So whoever buys your business wants to know that on the 20th of June, 2026, all the gaffer tape isn't going to suddenly start peeling off the walls, and these joints are all going to fall apart, and the whole business is just going to collapse because it was like the builder O'Reilly from Fawlty Towers put all this stuff together, and you sail off into the sunset, see you later, guys, and the whole thing falls apart. Now they want to know, no, actually, this thing's been completely systemized, and actually, I haven't been involved in the business since 2024. And I've just been the conductor of the orchestra, as John Monks used to say.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the things that I do have to make sure starts to happen is the business isn't just about me. So if you look at someone like Grant Cardone, who I'm not going to criticise because he's far more successful than I am, but if you take Grant Cardone out of the Grant Cardone Foundation or business, whatever it's called, who have you got? Nobody can step into Grant Cardone. Yeah, it's like, I don't know, Cristiano Ronaldo Limited. You get rid of Cristiano Ronaldo, you ain't got a business anymore.
Yeah.
So I need to make sure that my business is a business, not me. And albeit I can be involved in my business and a part of my business, but if I drop down a hole tomorrow, the business can still function without me and so on.
Yeah, but you can still buy a Dale Carnegie course.
There is that.
Oh dear, definitely. So obviously we met, let's say, just over a year ago now, and you were talking about this exit, and that was my introduction to you was, oh my God, this guy's building a big business. after a year of hanging around with a bunch of guys talking about ambitious lifestyle businesses and 1% gains, has your perspective changed on kind of the exit figure or the business that you're building or the lifestyle that you actually want either now or in the future?
Not really. Weirdly, it had changed probably about a year or so before I met you. So let's say a couple of years ago now, it's something like that. And I used to have this really big number in mind. And then I did a few bits and pieces, and funny enough, it's in a book that I'm reading at the moment, or I'm listening to an audio book called How to Get Rich by Felix
Dennis.
Dennis, there you go. And in it, Felix Dennis is worth, I believe, something that's 800 million. I think he's passed away now, but it was something like 800 million quid, so fortuned. But he mentioned in the book, which was something that kind of dawned on me a little while ago without his advice, was why don't you just get to a certain number really quickly that will give you the lifestyle that you want, rather than trying to kind of take over the world. And so my number came down significantly. Well, I tell you, it doesn't really matter what the numbers were, but it was originally I wanted 100 million quid.
Yep.
But then I kind of thought, what can I do with 100 million that I can't do with 80?
Exactly.
And what can I do with 75 that I can't do with 50?
Yeah.
And so anyway, I eventually settled on the number of 25 million.
Yep.
Which is plenty of money for anyone. It's also enough that I can kind of waste a bit, lose a bit, mess up a little bit, and still have a bit left. Mm-hmm. It's not like it's all in. If you've got 25 million, you've got an income of probably $1.5 million just on interest out the bank, if you're a trust fund or something, if you put it in one of those things.
It's going to cost you a fortune if we bring in negative interest rates.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm fingers crossed by that 5 years' time, everything should be back up and running. We would like to hope. But yeah, so I settled on sort of 25 million just as a nice round number. It's more than happily going to give me the lifestyle that I want, enough for me to fund a couple of generations of my family after that. My kids can get plenty left as and when I'm no longer on this mortal earth and all of that stuff. But yeah, I just figured it was a kind of a nice number and a big enough challenge almost.
Definitely. Is there anything you can't do with 10 million that you can do with 25 million?
I think the thing you can do with 10 million is you could lose it. Even if you put a few bad business investments or something like that. I don't know, in all honesty, I haven't actually done any sort of scientific processes on this, but people who win 10 million on the lottery can lose it.
Yep.
Not many people that get to 25 million end up skint.
Yeah.
I might be wrong. I'm sure there's examples.
I think it's the way you come into the money as well. And if you've got good money discipline and you come into money, you'll be fine with it. You'll make more of it. Money will just amplify what you already are. So if money already flows through your fingers quite easily, 10 million, 25 million, 100 million can all go because you just think, yeah, do you know what? I really enjoyed, or even I didn't enjoy working for TGI Fridays. Do you know what? I'm going to buy the bloody franchise. I'm going to chuck all my share. I'm going to buy a controlling stake in TGI, and I'm going to tell them that the correct way to have the toilet rolls is the other way around, because that's what's important to me. The money will soon flow through your fingers that way. But it is interesting, and so many people, they do pluck these big numbers out of the air, and I think actually sitting down and saying, what is your number? And I've gone through this exercise a couple of years ago, and you sit down and you write, okay, this is how much I want to spend on holidays. This is the home I want to live in. This is, I want to send my kids to private school. All right. I want to, buy a helicopter. I want to sail on a yacht. I want to do this. I want to do that. Tot it up. And for most people, what you actually really want, it's probably not going to cost you more than a couple of million.
Yeah, I think you used to be part of the EC as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
In the EC, Nigel Bottrell, for anyone that doesn't know, used to run the EC. And weirdly, going back to what we were saying earlier about I need to not be in my brand anymore, the EC used to be called Nigel Bottrell's Entrepreneurs Circle.
That's right.
But then he realised he's pivotal to the business, so he started to extract himself, and it's a very similar thing. But Nigel always used to talk about a process of adding up all the things that you want. How much is that going to cost you in a year? So you want a car, a house, the mortgage payments on the house, the repayments on a car, holidays, clothes, whatever your kind of things are. And then I think it was times it by 16, and that should give you your, if you put that money in a fund that should give you 6 to 8% return or something like that, that's your number. And as you say, most people don't really need more than a couple of $100,000 a year
to
live their ideal lifestyle.
Yeah,
which is £2.5 million or something.
Exactly. If you invest wisely and tax efficiently, then I would imagine that most people listening to this podcast, not everybody, but most people would say, do you know what, $5,000 a month tax free, I could live on that. Particularly if your mortgage is paid off and your kids are grown up and you've got nothing but holidays and nice days out and meals to cover. It's like, yeah, $5,000 a month, I could do that. Well, that's $60,000 a year. 5%, that's 1.2 million in the bank. That's all you need.
Yeah. And I think once you've got your number, and mine's probably a little bit more than I actually need, but it's also enough of a challenge. I'm not saying 1 million isn't a challenge by any stretch, but I want to have, I'm kind of into challenging myself, and I'm one of those people that if somebody tells me I can't do something, then I'll move hell and high water to get it done, even if it doesn't benefit me, just because I want to prove the point, like the toilet roll in TGI Fridays or something. Well, about to lose everything I've ever earned, but that toilet roll will be the right way round because I said so. But no, I think there comes a point, as you say, when it kind of gets a bit pointless. It always amazed me. Some years ago, the richest man in the world was always the Sultan of Brunei. And the Sultan of Brunei was, I think at the time, worth somewhere in and around the region of 9 billion quid. And he was famous for being what they call a high roller gambler in Las Vegas. And what he would do then was the casinos in Vegas would fly the Sultan of Brunei from his house, presumably in Brunei, take him to Vegas, and he would gamble the night away, because as the Sultan of Brunei, he might gamble something like 10 million quid in a night, and obviously for the casino, that's worth it. But I always thought, if you were the Sultan of Brunei and worth 9 billion quid, what's the point in gambling? Because even if you win another billion quid tonight, how is your lifestyle any better because you've got 9 billion than when you only had 8 billion? It's
about the fun and the entertainment, isn't it? And but that thrill and when the fun stops, stop.
Well, yeah, but with something like casino gambling, roulette or something like that, there's no skill involved in that. Picking a horse or picking a sport team or something like that, there's a bit of skill involved. If you know about horse racing, you'll do better than me because I don't. I know about golf. I'd do better than most people picking who's going to win the golf. But with something like roulette, you may as well just play for matchsticks if you're worth billions. I just don't, and that's where the kind of the thought of there's a point where it's no longer beneficial for me to have any more money.
Yeah. So I'd like to have a little chat about the Facebook thing, because that's kind of what you're building your businesses on is social media and Facebook. Facebook ads, do they work?
Absolutely. I mean, my thing on Facebook, and what I think people miss the point in, is for God knows how many years, since about the 40s since TV was invented, more or less, the thing was get yourself an ad on the TV if you possibly can, because there's millions of people staring at the TV. The drawback was it costs, I don't know, 10 grand to produce a TV ad and then 100 grand to put them on or something like that. And I think I'm not sure if this might have changed in the last couple of years, but up until a little while ago, the most expensive ad slot in the world on the TV was the ad in the middle of the Super Bowl. And it was only ever Apple and Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and Michael Jackson was in it one year, and it cost something. I remember seeing something that someone said it cost $5 billion to produce that ad and run that ad and buy that ad space and so on. But if you think about it now, more people are staring at their phone and Facebook on their phone than they do on TVs. And even more so now, when an advert comes on the TV, that's when you pick your phone up and watch your phone rather than watching the advert on the TV. So what was the audience on the TV is now much more on Facebook or on social media or on online generally. And with Facebook being by far the most used website on the planet, and people spend more time on it than any other, they basically can't not work if you're doing them correctly. But, TV ads don't work if you don't do them correctly. So, yeah, absolutely. They 100% work. And at the moment, the cost of getting your ad in front of the same number of people that you would want to get them in front of in the middle of Coronation Street or something, I don't know, 3 million people, the TV ad compared to the Facebook ad cost is just ridiculously, the Facebook ad would be 95% less, put it that way.
And highly targeted, whereas Coronation Street is just people who like Coronation Street.
Absolutely. And then within the people, say what happens is with all advertising, you kind of have to generalize. So, for example, if you wanted to sell, say, makeup, you probably wouldn't put your ad in the middle of a football match because the biggest majority of the viewers are men. If you wanted to sell men's aftershave, I don't know, a male-based product, you wouldn't stick it in the middle of loose women in the afternoon, although there will be some crossover. But so as you say, it'd be hyper-targeted. And not only that, you can follow up with those people because you can see who's looked at the ad, what they've done with the ad, have they shown interest further, and then you can kind of retarget those people with follow-ups from there. So by far, I mean, for my money, it's without a doubt the most powerful advertising platform there's ever been as far as interruption marketing goes. As far as search marketing goes, Google is its competitor. So it depends whether you're a search-based product or service or an interruption-based product or service, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. If you're an emergency plumber, then waiting for people to scroll down to your Facebook ad is probably not going to happen, is it? Absolutely.
And that's the thing, if you're come home tonight and your house is flooded, you're not going to look on Facebook for a plumber. You're going to go to Google and say, you can fix my leaky roof. Yeah. Although there are ways that plumbing services can use Facebook ads and so on, and just get themselves known to people and start to create a bit of a relationship with them, so that when they do have that problem, they John the plumber, he was that bloke that told me a load of good stuff on Facebook.
Yeah.
Trust me. Our 1%ers, they're really lucky because we've got some masterclasses which you put together for Facebook ads, and that's absolutely brilliant, along with loads of other business topics and things. But if we were looking at people who are just kind of coming into the world of Facebook ads, what's the kind of one tip or two tips maybe that you would give to somebody who's new to kind of Facebook ads?
I think the big thing with Facebook and advertising generally that an awful lot of people miss when they first start, and a lot of people who've been around for a long time sort of somehow have got to where they are without sort of understanding this, is with all your advertising, you want to be helping people. So you want to be kind of trying to build a relationship with someone. And I always kind of talk about, it's very much like starting a relationship with a new boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever it happens to be. And when you first kind of meet someone, you might meet them in a pub tonight or something, and initially you just kind of smile across the bar at them. And then if they smile back, you can take the next step, which might be you go and introduce yourself. Once you've introduced yourself, you buy them a drink, you get their name, eventually you get their phone number, you go on a first date, you get engaged, eventually you get married, or whatever the process happens to be. And when you're advertising, it's kind of similar. So especially on Facebook, where nobody's on Facebook to buy stuff. They're on there to look with their friends and do whatever they do on Facebook with their friends and families and so on. So if you're going to introduce yourself to that person, you can't just say, here's a thing, do you want to buy it off of me? Because that's not what they're there for. But if you can kind of create that smile across the bar moment, whereas say if you, I don't know, selling something like let's say plumbing services, just because you brought it up. If I saw a thing on Facebook that said, here's a video that shows you the top 7 things that are going to stop you calling out a plumber this year, or something like that, then I might look at it, because you're not kind of trying to sell me something. You're just trying to help me not call the plumber out this year, and therefore save myself however much plumbers cost. And then from there, once you've got people watching those videos, you then kind of know, or this content, whatever it happens to be, you then know that person must be a householder. They must want to save money on their plumbing bills or whatever it happens to be. So you can start to understand what that person's like, and then you can kind of take them to a next step and, sort of build that relationship thing. So as John was saying, when you come home and your house is flooded, you maybe won't go to Google. You'll know that bloke, John the plumber, who has been giving me loads of free advice on Facebook about how to save money on my plumbing stuff at home. I'll give him a call because I already know him, even though they don't really know you, but they've got a perception of knowing you because they've seen so much of your sort of helpful stuff. And sort of trying to sell something on Facebook, I always say to people, just sticking that up that says, I'm a plumber, come and buy my plumbing stuff, is a bit like walking into the pub tonight and just shouting out who wants to get married.
Yeah.
And, after a few beers, every now and then I've had a bit of success. But
once people know you've sold your company for 25 million, I think you might get a few yeses.
Exactly. That's what it's all building up to. There's a whole process in plan. But yeah, it's just that engage with people, and social media is meant to be social. So as a business, you can be social with people. You don't just have to say, here's a thing, come and buy my thing, because people just won't respond to it.
That's it. And that
would be my top tip, should we say.
I love that. I do. I mean, that constant drip, drip, drip of, let's say, those little touches, moving them from glance across the bar, kiss, touch, whatever, it's very similar to the kind of weekly emails tactic that I talked about in Routine Machine, whereby just emailing prospects once a week with something that isn't salesy and just gives them that little value works gangbusters. And it works particularly well for businesses that are reactive. So, I mean, the case studies I used in the book, for example, there was one is a marine engineering company. So the only time people want to use their services is when their boat engine explodes. So very, very reactive. But who are you going to call when your boat explodes? Well, you're going to call the guy who's been emailing you with really, really useful stuff every week for the last 18 months. The HR lady, when you got a staff problem, who do you call? Well, you call the person who like and trust. It's that basics of marketing again, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be exactly the same if you had a family member or an old friend, like a personal friend who you knew, that was a mechanic, and your car broke down. The first person you're going to call is that person, that whole know, like and trust are the things that the key to everything. So because you've known your brother or your sister or whatever, and they're a mechanic and you've got a car problem, you're instantly saying, well, the first person I'm going to call is that person I know, like and trust.
Is that true, Jason? Because Jason's brother is a mechanic.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
But yeah, you're going to go to the person who's familiar to you, and who like and trust. It's just the default thing for people to do almost.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's that fear, like we said about the predictability of revenue for a person buying a business. For a person buying a product or service, it's I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to hire a cowboy. I don't want to get burnt. I don't want to lose money. I want this to work. That's all they want to do.
Absolutely. And I always sort of use the analogy of in every town and city and village around the world virtually, there's lots of, say, takeaway food places. There's lots of, say, 3 or 4 pizza restaurants, 3 or 4 Indian, 3 or 4 Chinese, 3 or 4 kebabs, whatever. But people will always use the same Indian that they always go to or the same pizza they always go to. And your neighbour might be fiercely critical of your one, but you don't like their one or whatever, even though you've never actually tried it. And the reason you won't try it is because when you went to the one that you go to the first time, it was all right.
Yeah,
and you don't want it to not be all right even something as simple as a Chinese takeaway, which might cost you 30 quid or whatever, you don't want to mess up your 30 quid. So you'll stick with what you know, as opposed to chancing what might be a million times better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Tell me about it. I'm not allowed to order from my local pizza restaurant because my wife had an argument with them. They are the best pizzas by far, but I'm not allowed to. I have to wait till she goes out to order a pizza.
You're not having a secret affair with a pizza restaurant.
Yeah, I have to burn the box afterwards. So, Danny, I mentioned routine machine just now. Do you have any favourite go-to routines that have helped you?
I think there's a few things that I do. As I said, I think earlier, I'm a big one on psychology. I've read lots of kind of self-help books, NLP kind of books, neuro-linguistic programming and so on. And I think for me, I kind of got into the whole world of psychology through playing golf. And because I play golf at a reasonable level, shall we say, and I really kind of plateaued a few years ago. And I didn't kind of know how to get to the next level. And my golf coach is a incredibly good golfer, a European tour player and so on. And he just said to me that you can't improve your swing really. I mean, you can obviously, but your biggest improvements are going to be if you fix your mental side of the game. So I sort of learnt a bit of sports psychology and so on. And I think the biggest thing for me is you have to have a goal or multiple goals and you have to visualize them as often as you possibly can. And one of the things had this conversation with somebody I was sort of helping out a couple of days ago, is they kind of like, so I've got to sit down for like a half an hour today and visualize stuff. So no, you could be sitting in the car and the traffic light goes red and you can visualize your thing. You could be sitting on a bus. You could be, I don't know, queuing at Starbucks. It's not a process whereby you have to say, right, I'm about to sit down and do the visualizing. You can be anywhere. And when you start to sort of visualize things, it just kind of naturally pops into your head.
Yeah.
And I do, believe it or not, I'm on a bit of a fitness kick at the minute, and I cycle quite a lot. And whenever I'm on my bike, I use that time to visualize stuff. Mm-hmm. So I have 3 or 4 goals that are really kind of top of mind at the moment. I've got the long-term one in 2026 that I visualize from time to time. But in the short term, I visualize what needs to happen today, this week, this month. And after that, it's all a bit in the future. So I can kind of worry about that stuff a bit up the road, should we say. But yeah, I think my biggest routine is to visualize stuff as much as possible. But the only way you can visualize stuff is to have a clear idea of what it is you want.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, the first of my magic ingredients from Big Ideas for Small Businesses was goals and goal setting. And I talked in the book about the process of visualization and having the vision board. And I think I talked through, originally I had this vision board, and it was, we were remodeling our home. And part of that, I think it was a new sauna. I wanted to fit a sauna within our house. And I found this image on Google. Other image sites are available. And it was like this fantastic. It was all glass and like black slate. It was really, really very, very swish. Absolutely loved it. We had the sauna installed and it wouldn't fit. The really, really nice one wouldn't fit. So I ended up with a more traditional kind of wooden sauna. I was like, well, that's okay. Also ended up with a brand new ensuite bathroom. And it was only after I'd fitted the ensuite bathroom and walked in and suddenly pulled out my little vision board image and realized that I had the full screen glass shower curtain and the exact tiles all over the bathroom that were in my sauna. I'd recreated the sauna in the bathroom, and just it happened completely subconsciously. I know people say, the secret and all that. I'm not a believer in manifesting the world, but I am a believer in programming your subconscious to spot things and those micro decisions that you take on a daily basis. By visualizing, you are programming your moist robot to do the right things to move you towards that vision that you have got clearly in your mind.
Absolutely. I think there's where you mentioned the secret. I think there's a number of ways people kind of believe in this stuff, shall we say. Some people will call it the secret. Mm-hmm. Some people call it manifesting. Some people call it religion. Some people call it NLP. Whatever it is you want to call it, and whatever works in your brain, that's great. But even in the Bible, well, I'm not a religious person, but I know Tony Robbins talks a lot. In the Bible, it says, ask and you shall receive. But if you're not asking the right question, or you're not telling in my world, it's the brain that does it. Yeah. If you're not telling your brain what you want, then how's your brain ever going to go and get it for you? Yeah. Whatever that thing happens to be. And I think it's, when I started doing some of this NLP kind of goal setting stuff, it's freaky how stuff happens. Mm. And you often look at it and that ain't right. That has got to be a coincidence. Yeah. But it happens time and time and time again. And I either live in the world's biggest coincidence void or something, or there's some kind of legs to this stuff. And I'm going with option 2 personally, because
I think the brain is a lot more powerful than us mere mortals are aware of. I'm where am I now? 43 now, 43 years on this planet. That is several million, if not hundreds of millions of memories that I've got in here. Yeah. And I was reading the other day and someone said, you don't remember all your memories, because if you did, you'd go mad, because you cannot literally recall all your memories. Yet I can read one line of a story or whatever and suddenly, instantly, vividly recall a memory from 17 years ago. And I can smell the grass, or I can hear a song and instantly be transported. And my brain is basically a big filing cabinet. And it's just gone, I recognize that. I've got something for that. Let me go. Yeah, 2001. It was this day. You were listening to this music. You were wearing those trousers. Like, wow. Okay. I don't need that file anymore. If you could put that back. And now if you could actually work going forwards and tell me how I'm going to reach this goal, absolutely. But I think that is what your brain is doing. You mentioned psychology just now. I was reading a book on learning earlier over the summer, and there was a study about students that were given the test before they were taught the answers. And the students who were given the test first at the start of the semester did better at the end of year test than the children who were not given the test, because the brain was given the problem. Right, here is the problem you need to solve. I don't know how to solve that problem. And then 3 months later, when they were taught how to solve the problem, the brain went, that's the answer I've been looking for, created the neural pathway, made it permanent so that they didn't forget it. When they were then tested on that 5 months later, they recalled it better because the brain created the problem first. And I think with your visualization, what you're doing is you're creating the problem first. I would like a lifestyle where I've got £25 million and I'm running this charity. And your brain then goes, okay, well, we're not doing that now, so I need to figure out ways that we can make that happen. And the more you nudge your brain towards that, the more your brain's going to go, Danny, there's an opportunity here. There's someone here who might buy your business. There's someone here who might be useful in the charity in 7 years' time.
Yeah, and it was something that happened a couple of days ago. I went out for lunch with my mother, and we live about 50 miles from where I grew up, or the town that I grew up in. And we were in this kind of relatively vaguely noisy kind of restaurant place where we were having our lunch. And somebody about 5 tables over happened to mention fairly quietly the name of the town that I grew up in. Yeah. And both my mother and I both looked at each other and said, those people are talking about Swanley, which was the town that I grew up in. Yeah. Yet if I'd have been sitting there with you, you wouldn't have heard the word Swanley because it means nothing in your head.
Reticular activator, not syndrome, reticular activator service, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you were sitting in a restaurant and somebody said the name of your wife or your kids or your mother or your father or something, because that resonates with your brain, you will hear that even though it's 5 tables over, because in your subconscious you want to hear about your family or your wife or whoever it happens to be. But I think going back to what you were saying about you remember stuff, one of the things you can do that's really powerful, I think, is memories create moods within you. So especially with music, I find if lots of people have got a song that reminds them of a particular holiday or a particular person, whether that be a romantic person or someone who's passed away or whatever it happens to be. And as soon as that song comes on, you can go from being really happy to really sad if it reminds you of a bad time, or equally from really sad to really happy. And I do find, going back to routine things, if you can focus on the stuff that makes you happy, so listen to songs that remind you of happy places, happy times when you were successful, if you were trying to do something work related, and that again just intunes your mind to believing I am currently successful, because you're in that success mindset, or whatever quite the word is that I'm looking for.
Yeah, definitely. I've got a Spotify playlist. It's called Choose Your Attitude, and it is literally based on it's all songs that just get me fired up or that mean something to me. There's songs on there that they're not particularly upbeat or anything like that, but they were in the charts when my kids were born. And it's like, boom, I'm instantly there. And it's got nothing to do with the song. It's got nothing to do with the lyrics. It's just when I was driving back from the hospital with my newborn baby in the back, that was playing on the radio.
Yeah, and you didn't associate that purposely, it just kind of happened. And even if you're in any kind of bar or restaurant or pub and the Survivor song from Rocky 3 comes on, the whole pub starts shadow boxing, because everyone is
wants to run up and down the steps, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. I'm waiting for Mr. T to come running out with all his gold chains on and whack me one or something. But
and the barman comes out, finish him.
Exactly.
Well, talking of finishing him, I think we're going to come to the end of our podcast now, if that's okay. But the one question we always ask, and the problems our listeners are listening to the Ambitious Lifestyle Business podcast for, is to find out how to get themselves an ambitious lifestyle business. But we always ask our guests, what does that mean for you? What is an ambitious lifestyle business? What does that mean to you? I
think for me, I genuinely love doing what I do. I really enjoy it. I love the people that my clients, the people I spend time with. I really enjoy being in business groups and finding out about other people and helping other people. And I think I have a bit of a thing within me that I like to help people. And I think if you can run a business where what you're doing is helping people, it's going to be kind of good for your soul and your self-worth. And so if you run a business where you're I don't know, ripping people off or dealing drugs or something like that, it doesn't really matter how much money you're going to get, you're going to have no kind of self-worth, I think would be probably the right word. But if you have a business that you enjoy running, that genuinely helps people and helps them achieve whatever they want to achieve in life, you're kind of halfway there, because I can't remember who it was. Somebody said, if you enjoy what you do, you'll never work another day in your life. And that to me is kind of what the ultimate plan is. And there's a guy from a few years ago called Zig Ziglar, who was a bit of an American kind of early Tony Robbins type character. And his thing was always, you can have anything you like in your life as long as you help enough people get what they want first.
Yeah. And
that's kind of, I think just helping people in life, it just makes you feel good. Yeah. And if you can do that, life's pretty good.
Fantastic. So if any of our listeners would like you to help them with their Facebook ads or any of the social kind of things that you want to kind of offer to help them with, how do they get in touch with you?
Probably the best way is I have a Facebook page called The Ad Crowd, as in the advertising crowd. Come and join us over there. In all honesty, I've neglected it a little bit in recent times because most of my sales and so on come from referrals. But I am about to sort of really get back into really kind of doing what I preach to other people they should do. It's quite easy in life to tell other people what to do and not do the same thing yourself. But as part of my new processes, that's where we're going. So come and have a look on the Ad Crowd. There's loads of free stuff about Facebook ads and what you can do with Facebook ads. And again, that's that kind of relationship building thing. It's just as easy for me to give you loads of stuff as it is to try and sell you anything. So I'd rather just help a few people out and see how they get on.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's, this month's.
We're not going back to weekly. No, not doing weekly again.
We're not doing weekly. No, that's right. It's monthly, isn't it? So yeah, this month's Ambitious Lifestyle Podcast.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us again, Danny.
No problem. It was a pleasure.
Fantastic. I sometimes like to leave our listeners with a quote here. And Danny mentioned the book earlier, Felix Dennis, How to Get Rich, which contains one of my favorite quotes of all time, which is, if it flies, floats, or fornicates, it's cheaper to rent in the long term. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
So there we are, another episode in the can. How was it for you? Please let us know. However you listen to these podcasts, please leave a review on that platform. Let us know what we can do better, what you like, what you don't like, and how we can improve to make this show even better for you. We'll see you next time.